Welcome to Rsbn Tonight. I'm Adam Taxin. Today, James Clapper, Barack Obama's Director of National Intelligence, doubled down on the ongoing narrative that Russian agents interfered in the U.S. election. Clapper, who is soon departing his position, attacked the credibility of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Clapper did not go so far as to call the supposed Russian election hacking an act of war. He said that would be a very heavy policy call, more appropriate for others to make. Senator John McCain also pushed the Russian hacking narrative. McCain, who I remind people finished near the very bottom of his class at the U.S. Naval Academy, said, "Every American should be alarmed by Russia's attacks on our nation." McCain continued, "There's no escaping the fact that this committee meets today in the aftermath of an unprecedented attack on our democracy." And I'll point out, again, McCain was, as the bottom of our class, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. There was a tweet from WikiLeaks about this general matter. It should be up there right now. DNI, James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, lies to Congress for third time, claiming Assange is indicted for a sex crime. He is not. And another tweet from WikiLeaks. Clapper just lied to Congress again, claiming that WikiLeaks put U.S. lives at risk. And WikiLeaks put up one more tweet, which I consider pretty worthwhile. It says, as you can see, journalist at Cassandra Rules, whom I don't know anything about, at today's Senate hearing on hacking with WikiLeaks shirt and free Assange. I like that picture. It just came out really well. Moving on to the story I think was the lead story everywhere else. Most everywhere else. It's the Chicago Facebook Live kidnapping and battery story, and I'm going to be talking about this with co-writer, co-producer Steve Lookner at the end of this. But you've obviously been hearing a lot about this over the last 24 hours or so, and you've probably seen the video or parts of the video as well. It's 30 minutes long. It features basically the tying up and torture of a mentally disabled white 18-year-old by three black 18-year-olds, and whose names, hey, let's say them. Jordan Hall, Tesfaye Cooper, Brittany Covington, and there was also a 24-year-old woman named Tanisha Covington. Today, the four were charged with aggravated kidnapping, aggravated battery, and aggravated unlawful restraint. They were also charged with hate crimes, which is what a lot of people have been talking about. And they're related not only to the racial aspect, but to the white 18-year-old's mental disability, as well as his race. This is, well, they were on the video shouting F white people and F Donald Trump, though I will emphasize this was a small part of the 30-minute video, and it was well into the video. Late this afternoon, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said that it was too early to tell if a hate crime had been committed. And people, of course, on social media, wherever, are speculating about what Barack Obama would have done, likely, had the races in this violent incident been reversed. And, of course, he did actually say something earlier today, which was very disapproving of what happened. And, you know, what more do you expect, really? I mean, I can't even criticize him for that. It's a local matter, but he did comment on it, and it's nothing I really disagree with. There was another video that came out today related to this attack. It featured the attackers forcing the 18-year-old white boy's head down inside a toilet bowl, making him drink the water inside. Now, we heard from Chicago police spokesman Anthony Guglielmi. I apologize to Italian Americans if I got that wrong, but he said the unidentified 18-year-old victim, who is from the Chicago suburb of Crystal Lake, northwest of the city, he said that he actually attended school with at least one of the suspects. So that separates it from a lot of hate crimes that you've probably heard about before. They knew each other, and we're going to be talking about that later as well. Okay, another story. You're anticipating, no doubt, 15 days from now, Donald Trump will be president, 15 more days until the inauguration. And the stories related to that are, predictably enough, now accelerating. One that you heard about, or may not have heard about, is Talladega College. And it's only about an hour and a half or so from where we are in Alabama. It has become the subject of what the New York Times is calling an impassioned national outcry. This was over the last few days because the school's marching band, heaven forbid, accepted an invitation to perform at the inauguration of Trump. There is an element of irony with all of this, of course, given that Trump is a Republican, and it's the Democrats who, it never gets old to remind people, not that I do it enough, but the Democrats are, of course, the party, it's a big issue here in Alabama, in the South, they're the party of the Confederacy, the KKK, Jim Crow, segregation, Robert Byrd, Hillary's mentor, etc. But back to Talladega College, it's been dealing with online petitions, threats from donors, etc. Supposedly performing at the inauguration would betray the values of an institution founded by newly freed slaves 150 years ago. Talladega, an interesting point, because people are talking about it as a historically black college, and it is historically black, but it is a private college, and most of the well-known historically black colleges are actually public. Just a distinction to be aware of. But anyhow, today, after days of speculation that the college administration might bow to the pressure and remove the band from the parade roster, the president of Talladega, and I got to give him credit, Dr. Billy Hawkins, confirmed that the band, which happens to be called the Marching Tornadoes, they would indeed be coming to the inauguration. And I like what he had to say. He said, "We respect and appreciate how our students and alumni feel about our participation in this parade. As many of those who chose to participate in the parade have said, we feel the inauguration of a new president is not a political event, but a civil ceremony celebrating the transfer of power." Also related to the inauguration, there is the Jackie Evancho story, or mini story, or mini micro story that we're giving her a little more publicity here. But she is a classical crossover singer from the Pittsburgh area who was featured on America's Got Talent. And it was recently announced that she would be performing the Star-Spangled Banner at the inauguration. Well, her album sales nearly doubled in the first full week after she was announced as an inauguration performer. Impressive. And correspondingly, she was also streamed much more often. That's how music comes to you often these days. But here's why we mentioned it today. President-elect Trump tweeted about this yesterday. Jackie Evancho's album sales have skyrocketed after announcing her inauguration performance. Some people just don't understand the movement. And this gives me a chance to talk about Rsbn's coverage of the inauguration, which we're getting excited about here. We'll be having wall-to-wall coverage starting from Wednesday, January 17th into Saturday, no, it would be Wednesday, January 18th, my bad, until Saturday, January 21st. That means the different balls will be at the National Prayer Service, at the parade, and even talking to people there. I won't be there. Some of the people you're getting to know will. I may be doing something else, though. We're working on this. I may be even in Little Havana from Florida, or various parts of Florida, maybe even Disney World, giving some coverage, maybe not live there, but we're going to work hard for you to make this worth watching. But enough of a pitch for that. Moving on. We reported here previously the positive Trump news that Ford is canceling plans to build a $1.6 billion auto manufacturing plant in the Mexican city of San Luis Potosi, and putting that plant, or those efforts at least, in Michigan. Unsurprisingly enough, this news was not greeted with quite as much celebration in Mexico as it was in the United States. Courtesy of the AP, a few headlines which I think tell you all you need to know. El Universal, Trump leaves Mexico without 3,600 jobs. Reforma wrote, Ford's braking jolts the peso, and that is a reference to a drop of the Mexican currency by 1%. And from the Mexico Economy Department, the jobs created in Mexico have contributed to maintaining manufacturing jobs in the United States, which otherwise would have disappeared in the face of Asian competition. And going around the world now to Italy, this from Reuters. Italy's government said on Thursday it would try harder to combat Islamist radicalization in its prisons and on the internet, and it defended plans it made to build more detention centers for migrants who have no right to stay in the country. Big problems over there in Italy. New Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni has come, again, another apology to Italians, Italian Americans, whatever. And I'm from a pretty Italian-American part of Pennsylvania. But he's come under, I think I pronounced that right. Paolo Gentiloni has come under increased pressure to tackle illegal migration and radicalization in jails after a failed Tunisian asylum seeker who spent time in an Italian prison drove a hijacked truck into a Berlin Christmas market on December 19th, killing 12 people. And going a little to another part of the Mediterranean, news related to Israel. Well, it's really more about Israel as related to the U.S., but take a look at this image. This is a full-page ad in the New York Times taken out by a pretty despicable organization I'm familiar with called J Street. It was taken out today. I got to explain J Street a little bit to people who don't follow Israel that much. I guess you could call it self-hating left-wing Jews, and there are a lot of those out there. And J Street gets a lot of its funding from the king of all self-hating left-wing Jews, George Soros, as well as from other enemies of the Jewish state. And the people in J Street, if you don't know Jewish people, it's so hard to comprehend this, but they're basically anti-Israel, but in a lot of cases, there's something bizarre psychological going on, and they're pretending they really are concerned about, well, two words, oy vey. But about the ad itself, let me read you this from Arutz Sheva, which is an Israeli national newspaper. The ad calls Obama and Kerry, quote, true friends of the state of Israel, and says that history will applaud your courage in addressing the conflict in both practical and moral terms. The ad goes on to quote from the speech Senator Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, the speech he gave last week, in which he spent most of his hour-long remarks basically lambasting Israel for constructing in Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. That's the proper term to use, by the way. Don't say the West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. And here's what the ad continued by saying, friends need to tell each other the hard truths, and friendships require mutual respect, here referring to Israelis and Palestinians, can choose to live together in one state, or they can separate into two states. But here is a fundamental reality. If the choice is one state, Israel can either be Jewish or democratic. It cannot be both, and it won't ever really be at peace. The ad quotes from Kerry's speech. Further commentary from me, suffice it to say, two words, oy vey. Moving on to Planned Parenthood. I know you guys love that organization. Republicans are moving now to plan to strip Planned Parenthood of hundreds of millions of dollars as part of the push to repeal Obamacare. And this is according to a guy we give a hard time to, but it's according to House Speaker Paul Ryan. Ryan said that a defunding measure would appear in a special fast-track bill that is expected to pass Congress as soon as next month. Here's what he said at a news conference, Planned Parenthood legislation would be in our reconciliation bill. That was in response to a question about plans to defund the organization. So pro-Planned Parenthood people, of course, are having a field day on Twitter, but it's after Election Day now, whatever. What reconciliation is, I better explain that. It's a special congressional procedure that allows legislation to bypass a Senate filibuster. That means it would need only a simple majority of senators to pass rather than a 60-vote supermajority. And the numbers, we have them from 2014 at least. It received $553 million in government funding in 2014, and that made up half, or about half, of its total revenue. And on a not totally unrelated note, I doubt that much of this audience is planning to fly to the UK to observe LGBT History Month, which I guess is February over there. But courtesy of Heat Street, there is a controversy related to that going on now, which I became aware of. And according to a Heat Street article, the following happened. A group of online campaigners, are there really any other kind these days? But they're trying to ban a prominent lesbian writer who I haven't heard of, but maybe she's popular in England and non-lesbians have heard of her there. But they're trying to ban her from discussing her past at an LGBT history event. Hundreds of disgruntled users posted measures trying to pressure the venue hosting Julie Bindel, a British journalist and longtime feminist activist, to drop. They want her dropped. And here's why that crowd, which includes a lot of feminists, objected to her. Because she has written in the past that men who change gender should not be considered women. This is definitely in the can't make this stuff up category. And while we're on that sexual minorities or whatever theme, we have this. Just when you all out there are getting a little happier with the Fox family of networks because of the upcoming departure of Megyn Kelly, If only Shepard Smith would depart too. But we have news that a so-called comedy show on Fox is taking another step to normalize so-called transgenderism. This is courtesy of Chris Menahan at InfoWars. A sickening new comedy show on Fox features a 6-year-old boy dressed as a girl wearing a bondage gag. The boy, who is apparently transgendered, is seen wearing the gag after burning his tongue licking a hot grill at a Benihana-style restaurant in exchange for $1,000 from his older teenage brother. This aired on January 1st. What that has to do with transgenderism, I don't even know. I don't know if I want to know. But the show was created by some top Hollywood executives. I don't know these guys. But there were other scenes in the show. It shows the boy dressing like a girl and commenting how the dress he's wearing kind of breezes on my vagina. I don't know if the laugh track came out for that one, but how nice. Michelle Obama time. Who else is going to miss her in 15 days, though I have a feeling the Obamas will stick around. But, you know, her signature achievement other than spending taxpayer money, the school lunch program, and I guess Let's Move. This is from EAG News, which is the flagship website of something called the Education Action Group Foundation. So there is a charter school in New Mexico which just made the decision to drop out of the National School Lunch Program. You know where this is going now, right? This is because officials there are contending government subsidies that come with participation are just not enough to cover expenses. The school, it's called Monte del Sol, and its students apparently are low income, but it's $40,000 a year to provide free and reduced price lunches for its needy students through the National School Lunch Program. And of course, there may have been other issues that the kids don't like the lunches now. They wouldn't say that publicly, of course, but you know, you got to speculate here. But according to something the head of the school, Robert Jessen, wrote last month, we received $3 from the federal government for each free lunch we serve. However, it costs more to serve that lunch. For the last several years, the school has been able to pay the difference, but this year we cannot. And this is, of course, something of a blow to Michelle Obama's efforts to commandeer the National School Lunch Program. The USDA, back in 2012, you may remember, it imposed strict regulations on calories, sugar, fat, sodium, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables at her behest. And more related to Michelle Obama. Man, I'm going to miss her taxpayer-funded vacations. Let me suggest a link from the Gateway Pundit. I always tell you things you should bookmark. I get a lot of information from there. It's not necessarily the most comprehensive in its articles, but it's very systematic, and we appreciate that. You know, if something's important, it will go up there. The Gateway Pundit, credit to Jim Hoff for running that so well. It's from earlier today. It's called OMG, She Can't Stop Whining. Michelle Obama tells Oprah, people don't understand how hard this is. And here I'm quoting directly from Jim Hoff and the Gateway Pundit. Michelle and Barack Obama's family travels cost Americans over $96 million. Her wardrobe cost American taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars. The Obama White House is notorious for late-night parties with Hollywood stars and music legends. You're being a little nice. A lot of them are hip-hop performers who are not legends, Jim, but you do a great job anyway. Oh yeah, back to what he wrote. On Wednesday, Michelle Obama whined to Oprah about how hard it's been. I can't do a Michelle Obama voice, so I'm not even going to try. I'll just be very masculine here. People don't really understand how hard this is, and it's not something you just cavalierly just ask a family to do again. Let me just tell America, this is hard. And not a direct quote, but back to what Jim Hoft wrote. Good grief. Americans are out of work, paying 5 times the amount they used to for insurance, eating soup and noodles because of her husband's failed policies, and she's whining about how hard it's been on her and her family? Okay, you love those global warming updates. We didn't give you a picture of Al Gore today, as we usually do for these global warming updates, but you have a picture of Atlanta, which isn't that far from here, only an hour and a half away. And yes, first of all, I know Boise, Idaho broke a record, but we're biased toward things within 100 miles of us or closer here. So Boise, congrats on the record, but you expect that from Idaho. You expect a lot of snow. I think it was 14 inches on the ground there. But here, something much more catastrophic. 14 inches in Boise is not as, well, that's a big deal. But maybe even not as big a deal is 2 to 4 inches of snow in metropolitan Atlanta, North Georgia. They don't have the equipment there, so you can bet schools are closed for at least a day. Well, it's coming tomorrow, so it, of course, is a Friday. They don't have school Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, I know. If you're in Canada, you go to school if you have a foot of snow. We probably have watchers somewhere near International Falls, Minnesota. But this is a big deal. And not only did Georgia Governor Nathan Deal already declare a state of emergency, so did the governor right here of the Rsbn studio in Alabama, Governor Robert Bentley. We may even get a couple inches of snow here. That would actually make a good picture. Maybe we should do a snow cam. I hope the guys in back, maybe they caught that part. But we may get a couple inches of snow right here in greater Auburn, Alabama. So that is our global warming update for you. Now, we did weather. How about a little sports? There is a story that came out. We're sort of in a no man's land right now. Baseball Hall of Fame, the news about who got in and got out isn't for another 10 days, I think. The football playoffs aren't until Saturday, and hockey, basketball, who cares at this point? It's pretty early in the season, and the regular seasons just don't matter much in hockey and basketball. But you may have heard the story about the New York Giants, who were in the playoffs for the first time in 5 years. There was something of a scandal involving the wide receivers. It wasn't really a scandal. Odell Beckham Jr., who's a huge star, even made the cover of Madden, and Sterling Shepard, who's a rookie who's done very well. Victor Cruz, who is coming back from a bad injury, and a guy named Roger Lewis, who I think is a rookie free agent who's had some troubles with the law, I think related to rape. But they had a day off. Look, football players really need a day off, let's be fair here. They went to Miami, they probably flew back the next day, they were on a boat. And that yesterday led to a lot of people saying, is that appropriate to do? But here some more details came out. I got to tell you something. This is related. I selected the photos for this. I'm from Philadelphia, and I'm going to admit I have a big bias against the New York Giants, as for that matter, against the Dallas Cowboys and Washington Redskins. So I'm just going to put that out there to be full disclosure. But here's something I would like to think the Philadelphia Eagles would never do. When they were in Miami, they hung out with Justin Bieber. Enough said. Really? You're playing a football game against the Green Bay Packers, who, they're like real football. That's your playoff opponent. Imagine how that went over in Green Bay. Someone named Trey Songz I've never heard of. But here's another problem. They hung out with Johnny Manziel. When you're thinking about winning, Johnny Manziel, this is a guy who's had problems, who blew a Heisman Trophy and a great college career to party more. Really? By the way, there's a couple good videos related to two subjects I've meant about on a channel I like called Hands Up Cam Newton. It's a YouTube channel. Very funny, twisted, football and other things related. You may just want to Google top 10 character issue bargains, and also Johnny Manziel, Tough Love from a Black Man. I think I got the titles right. They're just worth seeing. But, it's questionable. Why are you doing this? Because, let me give you there's a woman, I think she's at the Boston Herald, Meredith Gorman. She covers sports. I think great deal right now. She covers the New England Patriots, who are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. She summed it up pretty well because, no, I got to say one other thing. There's an Adderall scandal. I totally left that out. Ad-libbing this part. That's why I seem looser. This came out today that there was on the video, you saw part of a picture that was part of a video that Odell Beckham tweeted out. He's looking very relaxed. But people were passing out joints and Adderall at this thing. So, what's going to happen if they win? They're going to be blamed. It's going to be considered a little awkward if they win or if they lose. And let me just give you this tweet from Meredith Gorman, who's probably appearing there on screen right now. And I think her Twitter hashtag is Mer Gorman, or is it Mera Gorman, MEREGORMAN. But she summed it up well. And this opens up a whole social media can of worms here. She wrote, if the Giants lose, she wrote, if the Giants lose, we all know the blame is going straight to those players. Should the blame be on them? But that's just the way the world is today, especially with social media. And, I know he has some opinions on this. So Steve Lookner, you love when the co-producer, co-writer of this show comes on. And I have to give you full disclosure about him. I don't know if he's going to talk about this, or I think he has some opinions about this too. He's from New England and absolutely hates the Patriots. And I think we covered that in the last week or two, why he is like that. But he has some opinions there. So if he has any strong anti-Patriots bias, that would maybe come up now. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Adam. How are you? Good to see you again.
I'm good. It's been so long.
I'm not getting in a Twitter fight today, so that's not why I'm here. I will say about the Giants thing that you just talked about, that my one thing is that I can't blame Odell Beckham for anything because he was on my fantasy team and we won the championship. So basically, as soon as we won the championship, basically anything he does the rest of the season, I couldn't.
Was he actually the top receiver in fantasy, or was Antonio Brown?
No.
Sure.
Actually,
I picked this, by the way, preseason. I want to say my preseason pick is looking good. It's not the conventional wisdom. Steelers over Seahawks. It's still alive. Sorry.
So I know this because I listen to CBS Fantasy Football Today, which is like the best fantasy football podcast.
I thought you were supposed to be working.
Well, no, I don't listen to it when I'm here,
Okay.
when I'm home. But that's the best fantasy football podcast for the many of our viewers who care about this, CBS Fantasy Football Today. But the number one wide receiver was Mike Evans, and the number two was Jordy Nelson, who was on my team.
And who's playing the Giants this week?
Again, once the fantasy season ends, I don't care.
Yeah, but if he has a good game, you can't blame the Giants receivers. You can blame the defense, I guess. All right, we're losing the audience real quick here.
We lost them when it came in.
You had a point about social media?
All right, so anyways, I wanted to get back and talk to you about this whole big Chicago video beating story. And let me first say, look, the actual incident itself with the kidnapping and beating is just terrible, and I don't think people should ever do that. So that being said,
the video speaks for itself.
Yeah,
and by the way, how many people were in Chicago were murdered?
Oh, that too.
That day, too.
So, but I wanted to make clear that we don't approve of the conduct. No. But I will say, so today was like a very busy day at the office, and I kept kind of having one eye on the TV, and whenever I would look over there, we have all the major news networks on here, I would just see like hate crime and like beating and like Rahm Emanuel on TV and Obama saying something. So there were Obama saying something, and so basically this was being covered on TV as far as I could tell out of the corner of my eye, as if it were like 4 black people picking a random white person and just beating them senseless because they were white.
That happened, by the way, the day after Election Day. That got a lot of coverage in Chicago.
But in terms of today,
yes.
So that was how it was being covered, as far as I could tell. And then when I finally had time to sit down and read and catch up on the news, I went to Chicago.
That's this weird fetish you have. You read the things beyond the headlines.
I actually like to get the facts behind the headlines.
You spend 2 minutes on these things.
And I went to Chicago Tribune because I figured they would have the most up-to-date stuff. And I started reading all these facts about the case, and it seemed like, well, that's very different than what's being covered. And so for those of you who haven't read this, I would suggest you go read it. But basically, here are the facts as I know them. The white youngster, kid, teenager who got beaten, he was dropped off. First of all, he was friends with one of the beaters from school. Then his parents, or one of his parents, dropped the kid off to spend time with one of the people who beat him up, and the intention was to spend the night there. So the parents of the kid...
Not your typical hate crime. Reginald Denny was not going out there to spend the night with the LA rioters.
Reginald Denny's parents were not dropping him off to spend the night with one of the LA rioters. So the parents dropped the parent dropped the kid off to spend time with the friend for the night. Then, so...
You're using the term friend.
Right,
I never saw the term friend up there on any of the...
the major news networks.
No, including Fox News.
But there's more details, even more. So supposedly, the kid ends up spending the next... That was a Saturday. The kid hangs out with the friend, with at least his friend, who was one of the attackers, until Tuesday. So it's now been 3 days of hanging out with no incidents. Then on Tuesday, the kid who got beaten up and the person, his friend, were having a play fight. This is reported in many sources, Chicago Tribune, New York Times. And I guess the play fight went bad. Something happened in the play fight. We don't know what it was. And at that point, the tying up and the beating started. Now, I know you talked about this with me, but I don't think a hate crime is when you have a friend and you spend 3 days with the person and your parents drop you off. Parents drop one of you off to spend time with each other, and then there's a play fight and something goes wrong.
I think a hate crime, I have a whole problem with hate crimes in general. What good does it do if you're injured or battered if you are the same race as the person? Okay. But, it raises the question, so did OJ commit a hate crime?
So, well,
he knew her.
And he knew the person, and so, I just think hate crime to me sounds like you don't know the person and it's motivated solely by their race or what their sexual orientation.
Well, and also, in this case, mental capacity. But here's another question I want to know. I don't know these people. They did not seem like geniuses in the video. were the blacks who committed this mentally impaired to some extent? They were going to school together.
So certainly, I will say this.
If it's the same category, how can it be a hate crime?
If it did turn out that the black beaters, the black assaulters, knew, or at least one of them knew the kid, or all of them knew the kid from the school, and it was because they were all had like some sort of mental disability and they're in the same program.
Yeah.
That would explain how they knew each other, and it would also explain maybe why they acted the way they did, because maybe maybe they weren't they weren't like adults who could express.
Yeah, and again, we're not excusing this.
No,
they're just saying, yeah, it absolutely should be battery charges.
And we don't know this is the case. All I'm saying is that more questions should be asked. And to me, all these very relevant details about the 3 days hanging out and the friends and the parents dropping off, those were the key items. And to me, if I turn on like CNN or MSNBC or Fox, the headline right now should be like, these two kids were friends and they had a play fight that went bad. Because that's the big information.
Yeah.
But it's being covered as if it was just like four black kids who didn't know this kid, picked him out because he was white and beat him up. And that's not what seems like.
Oh, you know what? I have to interrupt for 1 second, and I want to continue this point. I mentioned Wayne Dupree. Did great coverage. I happened to hear his show yesterday, and I think I may have ignored the teleprompter. Go listen to the Wayne Dupree show from last night, the beginning 10 minutes. Excellent on this, and he's very sympathetic because I think his sister had some special needs. Sorry to have to cut you off, but I forgot to mention it earlier.
And the last thing I'll say is, again, I just think, if these news stories come up, don't react immediately and emotionally. Go do some reading. Doesn't have to take that long, and find out the facts on both sides before you come to a conclusion. That's all I ask.
And I just want to finish with, I'm not excusing their behavior at all, but I'm just saying there just may be more to it. And we don't know what happened before. I doubt he did something. There were four of them, one of him, but what happens if there was something not on camera? Oh yeah, he could have said the N-word. We don't know
that's true, and the whole play fight thing to me might just be some story somebody told, and maybe it's not true. So who knows? At this point, we don't know that much. Before we go, I always like to throw out our Twitter feed in case.
Right, I always forget.
So mine is at Lookner, Lookner. Yours is
Adam_Taxin.
And they should also follow Right Side Broadcasting.
Yeah, go.
What is that one?
RSB Network. At RSB Network.
Thank you. Okay.
And how about following Brad Savage? He's been working so hard.
Yeah, give a shout out to Brad.
And that is at New World, New Age, and Jacob is our music director and does so much more here. Jake Rsbn Music.
We'll do Joe and everybody else next time.
Okay.
But we'll get to more Twitter addresses to you.
Thanks for watching, everyone.